Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel. Today we're diving into an intriguing question. Is there an animal that's not mentioned in the Bible? You might be surprised by the answer. The Bible mentions many animals, from lions to eagles, and even mythical creatures like Leviathan. But what about animals that are notably absent? Stay tuned as we explore which animal never made it into the pages of this ancient text and why that might be. Let's get started. Sure, here's a more engaging and dynamic version of your script. Hey, we've all heard the Bible tells us God created everything, right? But wait a second, there are some huge gaps here. Where are the dinosaurs? And what about creatures like unicorns or other mythical beasts that ancient civilizations swore were real? If the Bible is the ultimate word of truth, why doesn't it mention every creature? Were some animals intentionally left out? And if so, why? Let's start with dinosaurs. Fossil evidence is undeniable. Massive, powerful creatures roamed the earth millions of years before humans ever showed up. But in the Bible, specifically in Genesis, not a single mention of them, not even a whisper. So, how do we reconcile that? Some people try to fit dinosaurs into the days of creation, suggesting they were made on day 5 or 6. But is that really an answer? Or just a convenient patch for a much bigger problem? We have overwhelming proof dinosaurs existed, so why is their absence from Scripture so glaring? Could it be that mentioning them would mess with the neat, tidy timeline the Bible wants to preserve? And what about mythical creatures? Beasts like unicorns, which some ancient civilizations firmly believed were real. Across civilizations, from ancient Greece to medieval Europe, people have documented sightings and encounters with mysterious creatures like the phoenix. Yet the Bible, which claims to be the ultimate account of creation, remains completely silent. Some say these creatures were just figments of imagination. But can we really ignore the fact that they appear across so many different cultures, spanning millennia, all described in shockingly similar ways? So why are these creatures both real and mythical excluded? Could it be that some animals were deliberately left out because they didn't fit the narrative? The biblical creation story is about order, structure, and divine control. But creatures like dinosaurs and the fire-breathing phoenix, they represent chaos. Wild forces that don't submit to this neatly arranged creation story. Now here's where things get even more intriguing. Some scholars believe these omissions weren't accidental. They suggest that creatures not mentioned in the Bible might have origins that conflict with the idea of a single, all-powerful creator. What if these animals came from another source? Could there be an ancient deity or force outside of Yahweh's creation at play here? Interestingly, the Book of Enoch, a text excluded from the Bible, speaks of fallen angels, beings who descended from heaven and interfered with creation. Could these beings have crafted creatures that were too controversial, too difficult to explain? We might be uncovering a deeper hidden truth, one that has been filtered out for centuries. It's possible that creatures like dinosaurs and mythical beasts were simply too difficult to fit into the divine story of a perfect creation. After all, if some beings existed outside of God's creation, then it begs the question, what else are we missing? What other truths have been kept from us? The Bible's exclusion of certain animals feels less like a coincidence and more like a deliberate act of omission. It's like history being curated, leaving out the parts that don't fit the narrative. And that forces us to ask some tough questions. Did God really create all creatures? Or were there other forces at work? Why is the biblical account so selective about which animals it acknowledges? We all know the Genesis creation story. God speaks and life begins, but that's just one version of the story. What if I told you that other ancient cultures, equally powerful and influential, believed it wasn't just one God creating animals, but an entire pantheon of beings shaping life as we know it? This isn't some fringe theory. It's recorded history, woven into the mythologies of ancient civilizations like Mesopotamia, Egypt, and Greece. Take the Sumerians, for example, the oldest known civilization, predating the Bible by thousands of years. They believed that gods like Enki and Ninhursag were responsible for creating not only humans, but also the diverse array of animals that inhabited the earth. Ninhursag, often referred to as the mother of all, was said to have molded creatures from clay, breathing life into them. Sounds familiar, right? But in the Sumerian narrative, creation isn't confined to a single, omnipotent god. It's a collaborative process involving multiple deities, each with their own unique roles in the creative tapestry. And the Egyptians? They took it a step further. Their gods didn't just create animals, they were animals. Think of Anubis with the head of a jackal, or Horus with the head of a falcon. These deities were not just creators, they were embodiments of the very animals they represented. In these ancient worldviews, the lines between divine beings and earthly creatures were beautifully blurred. Animals weren't seen as lesser beings created merely to serve humans. They were considered extensions of the divine itself. What does that do to the notion that animals are just another part of God's creation, intended solely for human use? In Greek mythology, we see a similar pattern. The goddess Artemis was revered as the protector of animals, while Poseidon, the god of the sea, was believed to have created horses from sea foam. Each god had dominion over specific animals, suggesting that the natural world emerged from divine specialization rather than the work of a single creator. Now, here's where it gets uncomfortable. What if these gods weren't just myths? What if they were real, supernatural entities with the power to create? The Bible itself acknowledges the existence of other gods in certain passages, but always frames them as inferior or false. Yet, ancient cultures believed their gods were just as real, just as powerful, and just as capable of creation as the God of Israel. So, if other cultures had their own gods who created animals, why does the Bible erase that possibility? Was it a theological power move, a way to assert dominance over rival beliefs and create a unified narrative? Could it be that the Bible's creation story is just one version of a much larger, more complex narrative, one where multiple divine and supernatural beings played a role in shaping the natural world? The Bible consolidates all creative authority into one God, effectively erasing any trace of competition. But what if that's not the whole truth? While the Bible presents us with a singular, orderly creation story, these ancient myths tell a different tale. They're chaotic, messy, and suggest that creation wasn't a neat, one-time event, but an ongoing, multifaceted process involving gods with their own agendas. In these stories, animals aren't mere afterthoughts or servants. They are deliberate, purposeful creations, sometimes even considered sacred beings. What's truly fascinating is how these narratives challenge the very core of monotheism. If we start accepting that other gods were involved in creation, it shakes the foundation of biblical authority. It forces us to question, did Yahweh really create all animals, or were some the products of rival gods, forgotten or deliberately erased over time? There's something strange lurking in the pages of the Bible creatures, so massive, so terrifying, they hardly seem to fit into the neat, tidy narrative we've been told to fit within the framework of God's peaceful, orderly creation. Let's talk about two creatures that don't quite belong: the Leviathan and Behemoth. These aren't your typical biblical animals. They aren't docile creatures grazing in a field. They're chaotic, wild, and untamable. They raise some serious questions about the origins of life and who or what was involved in creating it. The Leviathan is described in Job 41 as a colossal sea monster with multiple heads, breathing fire and smoke. This creature isn't just big, it's beyond comprehension, something that can't be subdued by humans. In fact, God himself refers to the Leviathan as an example of his immense power, but its very existence feels like a contradiction. Why would a being of such destructive force exist in a world created by a benevolent God who seeks order? How does this monstrous entity fit into the carefully structured creation story of Genesis? Then we have Behemoth, also mentioned in the book of Job. This creature is depicted as a gigantic land dweller, a beast so powerful it drinks up entire rivers and remains unmoved by human efforts. Some have tried to rationalize Behemoth as an elephant or a hippopotamus, but the biblical description doesn't align with any modern-day animal we know. It seems to be something else entirely, something ancient, primal, and beyond our understanding. Here's where it gets even more intriguing. These creatures aren't just stories. They embody the forces of chaos that early civilizations believed were constantly at odds with divine order. Take the Leviathan, for example. It has clear parallels in other ancient myths. In Canaanite mythology, the storm god battles Yam, the god of the chaotic sea, along with his monstrous sea creatures, one of which strikingly resembles the Leviathan. Other cultures, like the Babylonians, tell tales of gods fighting sea serpents that symbolize chaos and destruction. Could it be that the Leviathan and Behemoth are remnants of these ancient, pre-biblical stories narratives, where creation wasn't a serene act of God speaking life into existence, but a violent struggle between the forces of order and chaos? If these creatures are part of that older, more chaotic worldview, it raises a crucial question. Did God create them? Or did they predate God's orderly creation in Genesis? The Bible, especially in the Old Testament, often reflects a reality where chaos was never fully subdued. The Leviathan and Behemoth linger as reminders of that chaos, monsters that can't be tamed, creatures that continue to challenge the very fabric of creation itself. To truly challenge the notion that God's creation was ever fully under control, consider this. The book of Job never explicitly states that God created the Leviathan or Behemoth. Instead, it simply describes them as existing, almost as if they've always been part of the world. This raises intriguing possibilities. What if they are remnants from an earlier time, perhaps even predating God's creation of the world as we know it? If that's the case, then the narrative we've been given, that God created everything in perfect harmony, begins to look incomplete, even misleading. But here's the kicker. The Bible doesn't portray God as destroying these creatures. Rather, it acknowledges their existence. It's almost as if God respects their power, allowing them to serve as reminders that not everything in creation is neat and controlled, and that chaos still lurks in the shadows. These creatures don't just challenge the idea of a peaceful, orderly creation, they fundamentally undermine it. If the Leviathan and Behemoth symbolize the untamable, chaotic forces that persist in our world, it suggests that creation isn't finished. It's an ongoing battle between order and chaos, with creatures like these serving as stark reminders that our world is far more complex and unpredictable than we've been led to believe. Much more mysterious and far less under control than we've been led to believe is the story of the serpent in the Garden of Eden, one of the most iconic tales in the Bible. We all know the plot. Eve is tempted by a cunning snake. She eats the forbidden fruit, and humanity is plunged into sin. But here's a question that often goes unasked. Was that serpent actually created by God? And if not, where did it come from? Let's break this down. The Bible is clear in Genesis that God creates everything, the heavens, the earth, the animals, and humans. But then there's a sudden shift when the serpent appears in Genesis 3. It's described as being more crafty than any other animal the Lord God had made. Its role is far too specific and sinister to be just another one of God's creations. This serpent doesn't simply slither onto the scene as a passive observer. It possesses knowledge, intelligence, and an agenda. So, why would God create a creature whose sole purpose seems to be humanity's downfall? Does that make sense if you believe in a benevolent, omnipotent creator? Why would he make a creature like the serpent, fully aware of the chaos it would unleash? This inconsistency is where things get really interesting. Some scholars and theologians suggest that the serpent may not have been part of God's original creation at all. In fact, there's a growing belief that it might not have been created by God in the first place. What if this serpent represents a force that transcends the divine order we've always accepted? Now, that opens up a whole new world of questions. let's dive into a theory that suggests the serpent is more than just an animal. It represents a darker, more rebellious force. Whether viewed as Satan, a fallen angel, or some other malevolent entity, the serpent's presence in Eden symbolizes chaos and rebellion infiltrating what was meant to be a perfect world. But if we look beyond the biblical canon, we find even more intriguing clues. In many ancient cultures, the serpent is a powerful symbol of wisdom, transformation, and danger. Take Gnosticism, for example, where the serpent is portrayed as a liberator, offering humanity knowledge in defiance of a tyrannical God. This isn't the story we hear in Sunday school, but it's a perspective that deserves our attention. What if the serpent's role wasn't to destroy humanity, but to reveal something to us, something that had been intentionally kept hidden? Let's add another layer to this narrative. In numerous ancient myths, serpents are closely linked to gods of the underworld, representing forces that stand against order and divine rule. In Mesopotamian mythology, the god Enki, often depicted with serpents, was associated with wisdom and trickery. Meanwhile, in Egyptian mythology, Apep, the great serpent of chaos, constantly sought to overthrow the sun god Re. These narratives challenge our understanding of the serpent's role in the Garden of Eden. Instead of merely embodying evil, it could symbolize the complex interplay between knowledge, chaos, and the divine. So, what does this mean for our perception of creation and the forces that shape our world? Serpents weren't just mere creatures of the natural world, they were agents of chaos, actively working to dismantle divine order. Could the serpent in Eden be part of this ancient tradition? If that's the case, then the serpent's appearance in the garden was no mere accident. It wasn't a part of God's creation. It was an invader, a being from outside God's perfect realm, whose very presence disrupted the divine plan. In this light, the serpent in Eden could symbolize a force that predates, or at least rivals, God's creation, a representation of rebellion and chaos that God couldn't fully control. Interestingly, the Bible never states that the serpent was destroyed. Sure, it was punished, made to crawl on its belly for all eternity, but it wasn't erased from existence. The serpent, or at least what it represents, remains a part of our world, still sowing chaos and challenging the notion that creation is a finished, perfect work. Now, if you think the Bible paints a complete picture of creation, hold on tight, because it's about to get a whole lot more complicated. There's a hidden story nestled in ancient texts, left out of most modern Bibles, the story of the Watchers. These weren't just any angels, they were a group of divine beings that... Here's a more engaging version of your script. They descended to earth and did something utterly unthinkable. They broke divine law and intermingled with humans. But here's the truly disturbing part. They didn't just corrupt humanity. According to the Book of Enoch, these fallen angels also tainted the natural world, including the animals. So what exactly happened here? The Watchers, after rebelling against God's order, began to tamper with the creatures of the earth. The Book of Enoch reveals how these angels didn't just impart forbidden knowledge like metallurgy, weaponry, and sorcery to humans, they also began manipulating animals, creating bizarre and unnatural hybrids that were never meant to exist in God's design. This wasn't merely about teaching. It was about reshaping the very fabric of creation, twisting it into something chaotic, something that reflected their rebellion. Welcome to Blessovia Science TV, where we take you on an exhilarating journey through the cosmos and unravel the mysteries of science. We are excited to offer you the opportunity to become a valued member of our ever-growing community of cosmic enthusiasts and knowledge seekers. Exclusive access to cosmic content. As a member of Blessovia Science TV, you will gain exclusive access to a treasure trove of cosmic content, including documentaries, interviews with leading scientists, space missions updates, and awe-inspiring visualizations of the universe, live Q, and sessions with experts. Your membership will grant you the chance to participate in live Q and sessions with renowned scientists, astronomers, and space explorers. Get your burning questions answered by those who push the boundaries of human knowledge. Embark on a journey that spans the cosmos and join us in unraveling the secrets of the universe. Become a Blessovia Science TV member today, and together we will reach for the stars. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, like, and share. Don't forget to leave your comment.